So, welcome, Dylan Smith, founder of Fair Play Collective. I just wanted to start with you kind of introducing yourself for all the existing chatters, all the newcomers.
Yeah, cool. So I'm Dylan Smith. You just called that. I am the founder of the Fair Play Collective, which ultimately, what's a really short version of what the Fair Play Collective is? It is an experiment in indie funded mutual aid. Is really the kind of the byline to what it is. That doesn't mean a whole lot, so I'll say more. But basically, what Fair Play Collective is striving to be, and I want to be really clear. Fair Play Collective is very much still, we're like 2 months in. It is mostly an idea and a website. It's a little bit more than that, and I'll talk about why in a minute, but it's mostly idea and a website so far about how consumers can help support indie developers at a more less of a in demand and instant gratification kind of model than even all of the models that exist right now, including Kickstarter and Patreon and Steam and eShop and all that, and more of a how do we support indie developers and still kind of get back those incentives and stuff like that, but allow them to develop in a space that is outside of publisher pressures, outside of like consumer popularity contests. And so the idea is that backers will fund studios or independent developers, single to solo developers, over the course of a specific amount of time, and then we will pass that money out to the developers. And one of the main differences between us and Kickstarter, for instance, is that the backing funding will go to the developers on a month by month basis with a monthly check in from those developers. So it's not a take the money and run, and it doesn't force the developer to have a vertical slice of their project really early on and say, Here's exactly what it's going to be at the end." Which can make it really hard to pivot, right? If you're trying to get to the end of the project, you've thrown out your vertical slice at the beginning and said this is what it's going to look like. You get halfway through and you decide, well, part of that vertical slice doesn't work. I really need to pivot. Well, if you're at Kickstarter, you can't. Otherwise, you've got to really go through a lot of explaining and say, well, I know you gave us $1 million, but it's not really going to look like this in the end. So the idea is that developers get paid on a month basis based on these backer subscribers. And then the developers are able to kind of pivot mid development cycle if they need to, work some other things out. And in the process, hopefully gets them Fair Play Collective. The goal is to get a developer that we're funding to a 1.0 status. We're not publishers. Maybe we'll work with publishers eventually. Maybe we'll have a nice pipeline for that. But ultimately, we just want to pay a living wage to small studios and developers to get their project off the ground into a 1.0 status. That's kind of the very muddy, high aiming view.
Yeah, I think this is a model that kind of stands apart from stuff like Kickstarter because there people kind of come in as the backers. They kind of come in with the mentality of I need to get a bang for my buck. So there's an
Yeah,
expectation, of kind of a culture of there need to be incentive tiers. People need to spend a super long amount of time and marketing efforts to design these, and then once they actually get the funding that they need to deliver these things to the backers. It's a huge hurdle on top of the work of just making a game, which
right.
itself is so much hassle. So I like your model, which is more akin in my head to kind of like being a patron of the arts or almost a
Yes.
charity, um,
Yep.
that allows people to work, to have creative freedom, to make, yes, a living wage, which isn't really always the case with indie developers, to be honest.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
and I wanna hit on a couple of those things that you brought up because they are really still important. So backing tiers, right? Versus being a patron of the art, and there's a lot to that. So we will have backing tiers because I do think it's still important that when you talk about patrons of art and charity, there are multitudes of people who are willing to pay into systems that they don't get anything back out of, right? And I think that's wonderful. And we really are kind of leaning into that. Like a lot of our verbiage and stuff like that is about funding, not about backing. Really, we're trying to lean into that and say, hey, look, you're going to fund because you believe that video games are art, and art deserves to exist. That's the whole point of all of this. But at the same time, there are plenty of those people out there, and there's not really a good space for them to exist in gaming, right? Like, because all of the other models are very much this pro consumer capitalist vertical slice, or even just buy the game when it's all of a sudden done because I'm being fed what's popular out of the Steam algorithms, right? But so we're trying to create this space for those people, but we also need to include those other people. And so to include those other people that are very used to kind of getting and getting and getting and feeling like they're owed the game, we still are including like backing incentives. However, to your point, it's not on the studios to come up with those backing incentives. So Fair Play Collective will have its own set of backing incentives. Some of those will be studio oriented, will be developer oriented, but it'll be more like, if you're backing at this tier, then you're going to get cool backgrounds and media from the games that are being created. You're also going to get dev diaries, day in the life of stuff like that. And so instead of, as a developer, having to be like, okay, what am I going to come up with? What are cool things that I can come up with? We're hopefully going to have a list of those cool things where we say, hey, if you're signing up with Fair Play Collective as a developer, we just need you to put out like a dev diary once a week. Say, here's what I'm working on. We'd also really like to know like about you and what you do in your spare time and how, what you do in your hobbies and stuff like that. Because one of the key things is that when you talk about, and I'm going to sound like I'm bad mouthing consumers here, which is not a great idea when my entire model exists on hopefully consumers will pay us to then pay developers. But when you look at the current kind of consumer environment, especially in gaming right now, and media is kind of this way in general, like movies and stuff too. There's a real sense of like extreme ownership with the consumers and the product. And it goes so far as people not really noticing, what's happening in the development, not really knowing who the developers are. It's this void of development. It happens over an extended period of time. Who knows what goes on during that? And then the game is released. And if I buy the game, it's my game. And if I don't like something about that game, well, then I'm going to be just an asshole about it. And not everyone does this, but it's prevalent right now where people are demanding of developers to fix this thing or to change this thing, or if it didn't meet their expectation, then there are campaigns to smear the development the studio. There are campaigns to bring review scores down and stuff like that. And really, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that developers aren't given, artists, creatives, anybody in the process aren't really given the that light of day to say, well, here's what I'm doing, here's who I am as a human being. And I liken this to like the comics industry. If you're really big into comics, usually an artist's style, you know what that artist does, you know what they've been doing, all the projects they've worked on in the past. You really like about that artist. But we can't say the same about developers. And I think that this like void of creation kind of dehumanizes developers. And so if we can lean into, look, you're here because you believe this is art, and you're paying for this because you believe this is art. Well, here's who the people are that are making the art, and you feel like you own the end result less. And it's funny too, because I think that happens when you know more about the process. So it should go the other direction where you feel like you own it more because you're more involved in it all the way through. But if you're seeing how it's created all the way through, then you feel like you own it less at the end, and you can go, "Oh wow, this is created by people. I don't have to be an asshole with these people." That's one of the big things that we're pushing for is just a change in the way that consumers think about the products they're supporting. And so we don't offer that vertical slice up front. We say, well, you're funding a development process for X amount of time, or we're funding them for X amount of time. You're funding us to fund them, right? So that's hopefully how it will all intermix in there. I didn't mean to yammer for like 4 minutes, but I did.
No, no worries. I think this is necessary to present kind of the architecture of what you imagine that you're
Yeah,
going
yeah,
to do. I also have questions, but maybe I'll leave them for in a bit about how this humanizing of the devs versus how it is in the comics world works. But first, I wanted to kind of get also to into a little bit of like your background because
yeah.
you're kind of, I mean, you have a team by now. I know that you're, I think, like 6 people, if I'm
Yep,
correct. You have a co founding partner. Um,
yep.
but I mean, from when I started learning about this initiative, I kind of caught you first being kind of at the forefront of that. So I was kind of wondering, like, what about you and your background has made you kind of develop this, like, both like insight into the I guess struggles of the indie devs and this the deep sympathy kind of required to want to make an initiative like this, especially because if I understand correctly, you are not actually, you don't have game developer background
Nope.
yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I think at the forefront is just empathy, right? I feel like just being an empathetic person and a real person in the world allows me to kind of view the fact that it's kind of a shitty situation right now. But that's a really vague answer. Realistically, I started working at Epic Games in 2016 as an IT contractor. About a year later, I was pulled on full time. I worked at Epic for almost 9 years as internal IT support and then leadership. The last like 5 years or so, I was one of the main IT support leads throughout Epic Games. But anyways, I mean, we supported everyone because we were internal support, artists, developers, QA. I made so many good friends at Epic, and it was definitely a situation where I felt like, I could it could be a career, because I had worked there for long enough. I was coming up on 10 years. I had made a lot of friends. I had moved up through the ranks. I was, senior leadership in IT at the time. And then Epic hit layoffs in 2023, and I got laid off. And it was one of those like really surprising. I probably had a discussion with the various people for years at the time. Well, if Epic let people go, they'd never let me go because I'm really important and I've done these things and I know all these processes and stuff like that. And it turns out that doesn't actually matter at the end of the day, for if you're in a huge studio, because you can just replace those people. And don't get me wrong, I understand that Epic is a corporation, is a business first and foremost, but it was hard not to take personally, right? When you're working somewhere for a really long time and you've kind of made this community around your career. So I got canned in 2023, laid off in 2023, and then I actually was really fortunate that my boss at the time at Epic reached out to one of the contracting companies that Epic uses. And yeah, and I got rehired on that contracting company to work for Epic again, which was kind of funny.
Hmm.
So my boss was like, "Hey, no, I need Dylan. He's been doing some stuff. If we could just have him back." So they hired me on. I went to work for Epic for another year, and then Epic cut 11% of their contracting staff in February of this year, and I got cut again. That wasn't quite a layoff so much as Epic just going through and like cutting, cleaning house with contracting. And I stuck around with the contracting company for, I don't know, 4 more months before I really couldn't find anything kind of within the same thing. And mostly had to do with the fact that the way they brought me in to then fast track me to Epic wasn't actually within my career trajectory. It was kind of a different thing. But no hard feelings about the contracting company. They were wonderful. And but yeah, so all of that, radicalized isn't the right word, especially in today's climate, but all of that really kind of set me up to really start noticing the fact that this was happening. Because if you think about the timing, Epic really kind of set the tone in 2023 of a larger company that's doing really well. I mean, if you looked at the money that they were pulling in, it's like, oh wow, this is a crazy time to cut 1,200 people, because you're just making money hand over fist. And so a bunch of other companies started doing that. Like 2023 really kicked off that like role of people laying people off. It wasn't Epic doing that kicked it off. It was a lot of things. It was people hiring like crazy over the height of COVID. I mean, Epic hired 1,000 people a year during the height of COVID. I was on the team that onboarded them, so I saw them firsthand coming in. It was crazy. And then also is this VC pullout business. A lot of these uh, a lot of these VCs went in and said, we've got this much money that we want to invest in your company, but we can pull out this much, and it could be the exact same amount, or it could be 10%, 20%, 30% more. And in the fine print, it said, well, we can pull out this money at any time we want to. And a lot of them did. really early. And they did this with AA and indie studios a lot, and with AAA studios. But they said, oh, you guys are hiring a whole lot, and we really want our money back. And so they pulled out a lot of their money really early, and it made a lot of companies either go under or have to let go of a lot of people to maintain profitability. And so that's the all of that mixed up is the reason that people just started getting laid off like crazy. But then and I play video games and I have for a very long time. Um, I play indie games like crazy, and I have a lot of friends that are making games. I have like I don't know, like a half dozen people working on twice as many projects right now, kind of on their own. So I've seen the day in day out of how difficult that is to do while also maintaining a regular job, trying to market it, trying to get it out there. And then you've got all the conversation around these crazy big games. Like Silk Song's just come out, right? And so everybody and their brother is talking about what's the success of Silk Song, like um, what's the recipe for that? And there isn't one, right? The success is that Hollow Knight was hugely successful to begin with, and that was the lightning in a bottle for whatever reason. But like it's you can't prescribe that, and everybody wants to. So then all of that, it was 3 or 4 months ago when Microsoft did their like 9,000 people layoffs. I was talking to a co or yeah, right, and they do it a second time, easy, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Why
what's
can't
wrong with you?
everyone just do that?
Yeah.
I was talking to a neighbor about taxes, weirdly enough, and about the idea of what taxes are supposed to be, which is you pay into a system and the system pays you back. Whether or not that's working is another story. And I was like, why can't we do that for other things like video games? Why can't we just pay into this system, kind of collectively pay into this pool, and then video games get made and then paid back to us? And then my wife and kid went out of town for a week, and I was here by myself, and I just started thinking about this just for like a week solid, and kind of throwing ideas at the wall and see what stuck. And I kind of came up with this very simple just idea of what if a bunch of people paid into a system, not expecting Silk Song to come out of it, but just expecting like if we pay into this system where people don't have to worry about making enough money, don't have to worry about what's popular. I bet they could create some really cool stuff. And then I talked to other people about it, and they were like, "Yeah, that's a good idea." And then since then, I threw it on I threw it on LinkedIn that like first weekend, and on like a Saturday, it had like a few thousand views, and it was clear that people were like, "Hey, you know, we'd like this to be a real thing." So then it stopped being just an idea and became oh well, maybe I should look into this a little more. And I started inviting people to talk to me, and you're one of those people. And I've had like I don't know, like 45 video conference call conversations between now and 2 months ago, and I have a Proton email address that's just blown up, and I've got a newsletter now, and it's just yeah, a lot of people have wanted to talk about this, which makes me think it's not a bad idea, right?
No, I mean, I
So that's my
definitely
that's
think
my
it's not.
whole origin story of this. It was a lot.
Yeah, although I'm quite shocked that it sounds like you've just been in a endless video call for the last 2 months.
There's been a lot of conversations. Like this week has been the exception, but I seriously have probably had like 3 to 5 meetings a week, sometimes up to like 10 in the past 2 months. It's been kind of crazy.
Damn. Yeah, it sounds like you're good that you have a crew by now because it's kind of
Yeah.
snowballing.
Yes. But that's good though, because I wanted to snowball. I want this to take off as something that people are excited about.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was kind of also like at the start there, kind of noticing the post on LinkedIn, or I'm not sure. I think it was on LinkedIn that I saw it first,
Yeah.
and I was thinking because I've had also the last years, like since I founded a studio and since I've been kind of in this struggle of kind of having a startup, kind of out of college, like not really knowing what was gonna hit us, and then it did hit us pretty hard, especially post COVID, because we founded the studio kind of during COVID, and we had kind of rosy eyes, like we thought, well, it's gonna be cool. We have a plan. We're gonna apply for this fund and this fund and this fund. Um, we had also a cool like game concept, but then we just had to kind of realize that no, now the industry is going to crisis. No publisher is interested in
Yeah.
this. It's
Yeah.
even worse than we expected. The fundings program, like public funding that we were going to apply for, were cut by the government because the money ran out
Yep.
because everybody was trying to get that stuff. And they didn't replenish it for like a couple of years. And yeah, we've just had to kind of figure it out. And it's also made me quite angry about how profit driven this is. This is truly an industry. It feels like it's a very mechanical, soulless, like not the developers in it, because the developers in it are still passionate, and they still want to make things that are fun and tell meaningful stories to players, and pour their heart into these things. But the reality is that it's still kind of a conveyor belt of, you have to put out games, you have to maybe work on several games at the same time
Oh
within
yeah.
your team. You always have to also apply for funds, talk to publishers like over and over, and just get ghosted, or like with a boilerplate, like, no, it's not going, it's not at this time for us, or something like that. And it's made me very angry about how it is that game developers have to kind of depend on some kind of investment like this, or a publisher. And I've really been trying to find my way around that with other models that could make sense. So when I saw that, like what you were describing, I thought, yeah, this something like this is exactly what should exist. um Something that's a little bit more collectivist slash socialist,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it. But I'm much more interested in that, because I think that a lot of people get exploited by the system, and it's not right. It shouldn't People shouldn't have to kind of give up their livelihoods because they are being kind of exploited for their passion.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I am really excited to see this also take off. A lot more people learning about it, backing it when it comes to it. So actually, um, want to even, like, before we go even more in depth, because I have a lot of questions about the details of how
Okay.
this basically how you've organized this. Um,
Hmm.
I also want to know kind of when do you think that you're going to be able to actually have people kind of support this cause? Because so far you're just 2 months in. As far as I
Right.
know, you've just created the legal entity.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
I think people, like, as soon as they learn about this, if they are excited for the cause, they want to just know, like, okay, when can we start putting money into this? So what do you think?
Yeah. It's a good question. I had no idea about. Realistically, I think that probably we won't start doing anything with this in terms of developers and backers until early next year. I think that, and that's mostly because I want to make sure everything is in place, that we're not going to end up kind of on the wrong side of things, over promising and under delivering. Because at the end of the day, like, this is a, I'm going to toot my own horn. This is a really good idea, and a lot of people have told me this is a really good idea, but that only matters if people buy into it. And if no one buys into this, then we're not going to do it, right? Because the point of it isn't for me to make money. The point of it is to create a space for people to create what they want to create. So if we can't fund a project, then we won't go forward with it. And we'll keep pushing it out and kind of like trying to reevaluate how to market it and how to bring it in, because just like anything, you've got to convince people this is a good idea outside of the people that really want to do this. But so all of that to say, we did file for legal status 2 weeks ago or a week ago, something like that. That should come back within this week or next week, depending on how quickly that works. In which case, I can open a business bank account, and I can put a donate button even on the website and say, look, hey, if you want to donate to administrative costs, stuff like web hosting and Google Suite, so I can talk to my team on the same page, or this and this and this, then here's the donate button for that. And if things go crazy and we get a whole bunch of donations, then we'll start squirreling a bunch of that away for whatever the first project is. And then I think, to be realistic about this, I think probably we will end up doing a kind of smaller form beta test of this early on next year, where we say, look, if you've got a project where you've been working on this for a couple of years on your own, but you really just need like 6 months of good funding, 4 months of good funding, and you could knock it out, get it to 1.0. We'd like to talk to you about this, because again, I think that the interest there is going to really drive what we can support early. If something crazy happens and like Giant Bomb picks us up and we've got 10,000 people sitting at the gates to back, then great. Realistically, we're going to have like 400 people that are really interested in this, at the high end and want to pay $15 a month to support this kind of thing, which is still not bad numbers, right? If you do the math on that.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah. So I imagine in kind of the perfect world of where I want this to go and what I expect, early next year, we're going to have a nice kind of bucket of donations where we've got some good administrative stuff going. I've actually got some business processes more than just sharing this Google sheet back and forth that we've been doing kind of business. And then we'll be able to invite backers into the specific tiers after we have talked to a solo developer who needs, let's say, 1 quarter's worth of funding. And we can kind of do that math and say, well, this is how much we're going to need to support them for 4 months. And these are the number of people that we're going to need to back this. And then we can really weigh that against one another and say, well, we've got that interest. Great. Let's move on with it. We're going to open the doors to backers, let them come in and subscribe, and then go forward with it. Best case scenario, like I said, we've got, we get some really crazy marketing visibility there, and we've got a whole bunch of people waiting at the gates to back. And I will say, like, I've already had a couple dozen people email me and say, hey, when can I start backing this? How do we pay you for this kind of thing? And which is crazy to me. So it is generating interest already, way early into this. But to answer your question, hopefully early next year,
Yeah,
and like
okay.
early next year, like the beginning of the year, not like sometime in the first quarter, the beginning of next year.
I mean, it's good to kind of have an ETA for this
Yeah,
for the people
exactly.
following. Um,
Yep.
so let's get maybe in at this point more into the details because I think
Yeah.
in order for people to be fully on board, they will have a lot of questions for, well, how does this practically work? How
Yep.
do you pick projects? How do you
That's a good question.
ensure that people, well, don't just like take the money and run? I don't know, even though that's
Yep.
unlikely. But of course, you still need to kind of have some accountability of how the money gets used.
Yep.
And yeah, I think there. I also have questions about, well, like your AI policy, because I know that you also have entered, like, you have a section on your website about that, and how basically, if you have any, like, well, what do these backing tiers actually are? Like, what are the backing tiers if you
Yeah. Yeah.
provide
I
them?
got it. I got it written down.
Yeah, so let's go with the first thing.
Okay, you got to start one. Yeah, one at a time because you just gave me like
I
10
know,
questions.
because I need to summarize them in my brain myself, because actually
I understand.
I didn't write everything down, so now I'm like, okay, well, so what was the were the terms?
That's okay.
So, first of all, how do you vet who joins?
Yeah. What from the project side of things?
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, this is still kind of formation kind of stuff, ideas. The nitty gritty are the things that we're kind of building out right now. Realistically, I'm going to pay a board of industry experts to be on my kind of like QA section and vet projects that come in. So the idea will be that and we'll talk about how we're going to pick projects soon. But assuming that we've got a couple of projects that have been picked for us to fund, I will hopefully have a couple developers, a couple of QA, a couple of product managers, or producers, if you want, on staff to view the project's timeline. So if you're coming into Fair Play Collective to have your game funded, what we'd really like from you is a couple of things. One is an agreement with all of our um, kind of policies so that you are not going to lay off any staff during the funding of your game. Like, it's very important, right? That's like one of the key things. You're not going to do any forced crunch for any of your development, and then you're going to be very transparent. Transparency is a really key thing with us and how we want to do this, and a lot of that comes from the fact that I was in the big corporate AAA studios where the pay scales were completely opaque. You had no idea what you were like, what anyone around you made, how to get a raise because you couldn't see what other people were making and know even like within your department, what your pay scale was. So you have to be absolutely transparent with your pay, what you're paying your developers. You have to be willing to for us to put that on the website and say this is what X studio is paying their developers, and each one of they're paying. This is where they live and what they're being paid, as well as being ultimately transparent with exactly where all the funding goes that we're handing over to you. And you can expect the exact same thing out of us, right? Every dollar that goes into Fair Play Collective is going to be put up somewhere for people to see. Here's how much donations we've made, and here's exactly how much we're paying for this, this, and this. Here's what we've got left in the pot. So it's all super clear. So once you agree to all of that and some other things, then we will vet your project with that board of industry experts, and I don't have a clue how many people that is, but I'm saying like 5 or 6 people, to sit down and look at what the project is, what you're planning on creating, and what your overall timeline is, and if this is realistic. Because I think for a lot of junior developers, solo indie developers that get into this, you think, oh well, I can do this in this amount of time, and you realize, holy shit, it's going to take me a lot longer to do these pieces of it, or this piece that I'm going to think so much time into actually is pretty nominal compared to the rest of it. And so hopefully that comes with some guidance too, right? This board of industry experts can sit down and say, well, let's look at this piece of it kind of from a 10,000-foot view. It seems like you haven't really thought this out. Maybe this is going to take a little longer than you think. But ultimately, we go through like a couple of weeks of vetting, and we're talking to the project owners about what they're going to do and how long they think it's going to take. And if we can find that it seems to it's going to work out, then great, you're funded. Let's fund this project. Let's move forward with it. You're going to be done, you say, in 6 months. We agree that this could happen in 6 months, and so then we agree to fund the project. That kind of leads into one of your other questions, which is how do you keep the take the money and run kind of attitude, right? We're paying out on a monthly basis. So that's our difference from the Kickstarter model, is that we're not lumping all the money in at once. I mean, if living wage is 50,000 a year, I don't know, what does that break down to after 12 months?
Like 4,000.
$3,000 a month. Yeah. If you want to take $3,000 and run, then that's shitty of you. But you're not going to get super far with that. So we're not incentivizing big old paydays right off the gate. So you've really got to like, if you're going to join up, it's got to make sense for you that it's okay that you're going to make a wage once a month that we can pay you to do this thing, because we're going to keep paying you once a month as long as you're producing this game. And that comes with a monthly check-in. Again, with that board of experts, once a month, we're going to check back in. We're going to talk with you on what your development looks like. We're going to make sure that you're on track. Now, to be clear, that doesn't come with any kind of top-down pressure, right? These people that are validating that the timeline is going well are not going, yeah, but maybe do this instead. Yeah, but this doesn't look so good. Like, no, there's no pressure there to change anything to make the game, unless we see, oh, you're really spinning off into this direction and scope creep is looking kind of crazy here. Do you want to do that? That kind of like top-down mentorship, if anything, to go with it. But the monthly check-ins will ensure that we're still on track. We're still making, the project in whatever form it's going to become. And yep, cool. We get the next month's funding after that check-in, kind of thing. So those are kind of those two answers of hopefully no one's jumping in to say, yeah, I'm going to take $3,000 and run with it, because okay, good for you. You don't get much further with that. And then also, the kind of panel of experts that we're going to have validating and verifying that these projects are realistic and aren't completely out of scope.
Okay, so my next question there would be then, because I think personally, my belief is once this will actually kind of take off in terms of, people knowing about this initiative, I think you will get a lot of applications. I like,
I already have a lot of
yeah,
applications.
yeah, like, and I don't know, like, I wonder how many you already are.
I
And
have
if
about
you
10.
just, oh, 10. I'm
Yeah, that's all so
saying,
far.
yeah, but I'm
No, no, no.
saying,
I hear you.
I'm saying you're probably gonna have hundreds, thousands of people
Yep.
knocking on your door being like,
Yep.
we want in. And my question is, how are you going to deal with that? Because you obviously will not be able prepare for magnitudes more, yes,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
exponentially.
Yeah.
how will you actually pick only a couple of studios? Because realistically, you will only have so much runway with the money that you will get in, and you'll have like, how are you going to pick? Is it going to turn into, I don't know, the jury kind of picks its favorites? You know, like how do you?
So hopefully not. So the only truth is trial by combat. Yeah, that's it. We're gonna pit them in rooms and say, all right, last man standing, last person standing gets funded. No, that's a really great question, and that's a question that I have been struggling with finding a really good answer to because so much of this is born out of a desire to really let people create what they want to create, not what I think is super cool or not what these people think are super cool. That being said, we can't avoid that entirely, especially at the start. Especially if this starts smaller scale, like I think it's going to. Realistically, the first couple of projects are probably just going to be the team and I looking at them and going, "Hey, this seems cool," to get it off the ground and to build that hype. And I think that's going to be slightly unavoidable. I mean, realistically, I could probably put something in a random number generator and just say, all right, we've got 100 projects. Random number generate me 43. Cool. 43 is the one we're going to pick. If you're 43, you get funded. But lottery systems are weird, and I don't like that idea either. So I think that honestly, at first, it's going to be a couple of things are just going to be picked by myself and the team. Um, Hopefully, that vets that Fair Play Collective is something real that is going to go the distance and a bunch of other people put in money and say, yeah, we love this. Let's keep going. And we can kind of grow and grow and grow and support more studios every month, right? So let's go to a future model where we're getting real funding. A lot of people are talking about us, and we can fund, a dozen studios a month, kind of thing. What I think would be really cool to do here is to turn this into a rotating panel of industry experts, cultural voices, and other people to come on once a selection cycle, bring in guest stars, let's call them. Bring them in and have them review the projects that we've got and talk about which ones interest and excite them, and bring in different people every single time to this, and kind of just have that selection process be from tons of people in the industry on a selection by selection basis to come in and decide, well, this is interesting because of this. We could turn this into a podcast idea where we're talking to these people and reviewing all the projects that we've got going on. We can provide feedback on projects that aren't being picked for whatever reason. That kind of thing. That's my best idea at the moment. I like that it's kind of a industry involvement idea where we're bringing in people who work in the industry, from AAA to indie studios to wherever, as well as cultural voices that maybe aren't in the industry but want to talk about the cool ideas that are coming from this, or what's pushing the envelope here. So that's the idea that we've got going on right now. We could probably make it more equitable somehow. Again, with the random number generator or something like that. But I don't know how well that's going to work at the end of the day with just throwing in, you know, throwing at random and picking. But we'll see. Um, get this rolling first, vet it out that it can work, and that people are willing to pay for a couple of things to be produced um, uh, within a creative space without the pressures, and then we'll kind of see how it develops from there. Not
Oh,
great answer, but there's my answer right now.
no, I think it you have to approach it kind of like making a game. You just have to make it exist first, iterate, and then
Yep.
yeah. But so when you mean with like bringing people in from the industry, did you mean like basically the people who would kind of like pick and review the submissions, or do you also mean like on this board?
It's totally separate, totally separate. So I imagine that the people who are part of the vetting process are going to be staff, right? I'm going to hire a couple or a half dozen people to be Fair Play Collective staff to evaluate projects and vet them, that their timeline and stuff like that is good, and without any kind of like selection process. They're not there to pick what we're going to fund so much as, is this viable for us to fund, in terms of like, can they produce this in this amount of time, does it make sense, kind of thing. Outside of that, we bring on. You see the cat?
Yeah, I
Kitty.
noticed the cat. I got distracted immediately.
That's Biscuit. Uh, Outside of that, we will have a rotating panel of folks that will come in, talk to us about project selection in terms of what looks interesting. Hi, Biscuit. In terms of what looks interesting to them, what looks culturally relevant, or not even, because not every game has to be culturally relevant, right? And this cat's just gonna just
Stealing the show.
totally outshine me. What are you doing? Are you Biskies? Usually he'll meow at me. Hey, are you Biskies? Oh, there you go. Meow. Come here.
The guy gonna come and
Biscuit.
make biscuits for us?
Yes.
Uh,
But yeah, two separate groups there. One group being staff that works for me, that helps out with the vetting process. The other group being guest slots that come in once a month. A totally rotating crew of people that come in, talk about all of our submissions, talk about what they find interesting, and help us select, what we're going to fund. And hopefully, by rotating people out, we get a huge variety of interests and of what's selected outside of like what's the most popular thing right now. I don't want a billion Balatro clones, right? I want the things that exist way outside of that, because the whole point of this is to make really crazy, interesting things outside of those pressures.
I think I make the connect made the connection to the Sock Pop Collective at first too when I heard about this initiative, because these guys had a running Patreon, but their scheme was that they were going to produce a little game each month, and they did that for years. But
Yeah.
that's different first because Patreon takes a much higher cut of the money that is paid. And the
Yep.
second being, they were producing games really fast, and your model is not for making a game every month. It's for making
Right.
a longer term thing, with the like security and stability that it is funded and that you don't have to worry about, yeah, where that source of money is coming from.
Exactly. And I want to be clear too that we are not against the idea of someone saying, I can make this game in 3 months and I'd really like to. There's got to be a wide range there. I think the initial goal was to say we would support up to 24 months of funding. And I think that's reasonable. I think that we can convince people, look, it takes a couple of years to make a good game, especially, if you've got a group of developers that they're doing this as their main job because we're able to pay them a living wage during this time. They don't have to work a second job or a third job or something like that. Then, um, we can help them produce that game within 2 years. But also, like, that's the maximum. I don't know that maybe we'll have a minimum if it comes down to like, we don't I don't want someone just churning out mobile games, right? With crappy, dark marketing tactics or anything like that. We'll put the X here where you have to click on this thing. And no gotcha games, stuff like that can just be churned out and churned out and churned out. Like we're not here to support that. We're here to support, individual projects. But at the same time, I don't want to say, we won't fund you if you just have a month that you want to make this game, because I think that those games are valid too sometimes. Oftentimes, maybe more valid than the ones that take 10 years to develop. So I don't want to be prescriptive on how much time, other than to say probably 2 years max is what we could probably get to with funding, because after that, I think you, unfortunately, unless we completely look, there's cat number two.
Yep, two of
There
them.
are four of them
Oh dear
in the
God,
house. Yeah.
it's their
Who's that?
house.
That is Gizmo. We are, I don't want to be prescriptive with how much funding that we can give out, other than to say here's the maximum, right? I think that's the goal here.
So it's more of a, yeah, maximum timeline, not necessarily the
Yeah.
budget required, but the budget
Right.
required will be basically dependent on how much you can support,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
assume.
Especially at the gate. I think that will be the most important in the first couple of rounds of this, right? And I'm very hopeful that we can prove out that we can do this thing. We can knock out something in 6 months from somebody already working on something, like I said. And then, here we prove this out. We put out a game. It's very cool, or maybe it's not very cool to you, but we've put out a game, something someone wants to create, and and then more people will go, yeah, that's valid. Let's jump into this and do this thing, and then that snowballs like you talked about slowly but surely, and then within a year, we are pushing out or not pushing out, we are funding a new game every month. We're saying, hey, we can select a new game this month. We can start funding you for X amount of time. Next month, we can start funding another game. And so we'll have that kind of rotating list of games that are just, within another year coming out every month. So that's the goal.
So okay, I think I have to hold myself back because I have so many questions. Um, so basically, when you're saying that, well, let's look at a little bit more at still like what Fair Play Collective is kind of setting out to fund in terms of types of projects. So you said something like, well, gotcha games is not something you're interested in funding. Or like I know that games generated with AI artwork or AI voiceover stuff like this, you're also not interested in funding these things. So kind of like there's a lot more you could go into,
Mhm.
and especially in the current climate, there's a bunch of people who hate games because they have a female character in them and they're woke, and
Fuck
obviously,
them.
exactly.
Fuck them.
But
No. All
you
right.
kind
I'm
of
going to make it really clear.
or adult games,
FPC
the
FPC
recent
is a
crisis.
left-leaning organization.
Yeah.
I myself am very left-leaning, and if I think that generally, and I haven't made it extremely clear on the website, and I need to. It's been a discussion I've actually had a couple of times on kind of how to bring that up in a I don't know, in a way that makes sense for the website, not for just me to be like, hey, I'm not going to fund Nazi games. So but there's got to be a way to basically make it clear that we are a left-leaning organization, and I think that will weed out a large portion of games. Yeah, front page bigots kick rocks. Exactly. That will weed out a lot of people already. A lot of projects will be able to say, look, this is the kind of shit that we're not going to publish because clearly this is a right-leaning political ideology as most of the game. And I'm not saying that video games that have right-leaning ideologies shouldn't exist because there are narratives within that are important to talk about, but it can't be the point of it, right? Like we're not gonna produce that kind of game. So very clearly, those kinds of games will be pretty much off the list, unless it is part of the narrative, right? Like the Wolfenstein games, right? It's part of the narrative. You can't have a Wolfenstein game without Nazis. Like that just makes sense.
Yeah, if it's
Um,
critical of the theme.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. It's critical of it. And then at the same time, I wrote this actually. I went through and I wrote down, and I don't remember where it is now because I have things in 8 different places apparently. Um, uh, because someone brought up in one of my conversations, one of my 45 conversations, someone brought up, okay, if you're saying that video games are art and art deserves to exist, well, then you're kind of opening the floodgates, right? That's true. We can't open the floodgates, unfortunately, because some things. While I do believe that art deserves to exist, regardless of what it is, I don't necessarily believe that I want to fund all forms of art to certain degrees. So if a game is steeped in hate speech for the purpose of hate speech, we're not going to fund that because that's not something. Again, if it's critical or if it's part of the narrative, then that's a completely different thing. But if you're just doing it for shock value, if you're just doing it to get a rise, that doesn't move culturally anyone forward, and we're not going to fund that. The same with violence, um, in the form of shock value. We're not making snuff film the video game, right? That doesn't make sense to do. I'm not against violent video games by any means, but we're not making things that are very specifically for getting a rise out of someone and moving no one forward in the world. Um, uh, and I really give me 1 second. I want to find the thing that I've got because I can tell you exactly what I wrote instead of trying to explain it all. Is it? Yes, creative values and content standards.
Okay,
I
let's
wrote.
go because I
All right.
again I think this is a very fine line to walk, so I kind of want
Yes.
to see.
Yeah, and again about being prescriptive, it's really hard to say that you want to fund games because games deserve to exist, and then also say, but not these games, right?
Exactly.
So so kind of their core creative values that hopefully will make it clear. Um, Creators have a space to follow their own vision as long as it aligns with our commitments to inclusion, respect, and ethical creation. We champion projects from diverse perspectives and cultures, seek to amplify underrepresented voices in the industry. We value new ideas, mechanics, and approaches, and trust creators to explore them authentically without predatory monetization. So there's the gotcha part, right? We're not here to produce video games that are going to prey on people and take their money from them. And whether joyful, challenging, or provocative, funded games should add something of value to players in the industry, right? So that kind of goes back to the like, if you're just making a game that's porn, then you're making porn, and that's fine. There's plenty of platforms for making porn. Fair Play Collective is not going to be the platform for just making porn. If it happens that there are sexual things in the game, right, that's fine. We can evaluate that. Our boundaries: we don't fund hate speech, extremist ideology, or discriminatory content. And we've talked about this already. Again, if it's critical of it, if it's part of the narrative, that's fine. But if it's just to exist because of that thing, then it's not fine. Works that promote harassment, exploitation, or dehumanizing of any group. We're just going to say all of these things go back to the if it's critical of or if it's part of the narrative, fine. Sexual content involving minors or non consensual act. Content that aims to shock, demean, or harm without artistic or narrative purpose. So those are our main things that we are not willing to fund just out the gate. Now, topics that we feel need a conversation where we may discuss but not reject these projects include extreme violence or gore, explicit sexual content, strong political commentary. Aligned projects are welcome. We just want to understand the context, and then like controversial mechanics and monetary monetization models. We will talk about those things. It won't immediately set you out of the running, but we do want to talk about those things and have a conversation because it's important that we know what we're getting into. And so mostly the alignment process is a pitch review where we look for alignment with our core values and boundaries. And in the values conversation, if the elements are in the topics that need conversation, then we can talk about those as a role in the work. And then we do monthly check-ins to ensure that scope and values remain in track. And then hopefully release day we support and community amplification or amplification we use to say here we've got this game done and we're pushing it forward. So that's the what we would and what we wouldn't.
We have a good question
You
right
know,
on chat.
yeah. How would you distinguish between satire and real thing? For example, in a South Park game where skin colors use a determined difficulty. I think we've already brought it up. It's critical of satire is clearly there to say this is a thing that we're making fun of to bring about the conversation. I mean, I think that's the answer, right? We've got to have these discussions in there. If South Park made a game where that was the only part of the game, and skin color, if you pick the wrong skin color, then the game was just abusive. That stops being satire at that point. I mean, maybe it doesn't, right? Because it's South Park, but I think for anyone other than South Park, that stops being satire and it just becomes hateful and abusive towards that element of the game. So um, I think that I think I've got a pretty decent understanding of what is and what isn't satire, and hopefully, I'll bring on a diverse group of people that can evaluate these things as well. Um, as a cis white guy, right? I intend to have a lot of other people on the team to take a lot of other perspectives in this because I also understand that I have a very different perspective than a lot of other people. So I think it's just going to come down to evaluating them on a case by case basis. Um, and then not worrying about it way too much. Um, uh, you know, Hopefully we just put out some good games that sure maybe have provocative content in them, but that provocative content is important to discuss and is important to get out there into the world.
Yeah, I
That
think
answer that question,
especially,
hopefully.
yeah, definitely. But I think especially the fact that you plan to have diversity on the
Yeah.
board evaluating these topics and what because I think sarcasm is not something that everybody picks up on, like or satire.
No.
Um,
Yeah.
in media, I think there's got to be a level of like communicating and
Mhm.
educating on those topics before people realize that that is satire rather than it just reinforces their beliefs. So it's tricky,
Yeah.
but I think at least with South Park, I think people kind of know what to expect because it's such an
Right. It's
established.
it's South Park, right?
Yeah,
You're either on the side of it that hates it because at its surface value it seems like something that makes you angry, in which case probably not you're probably not for it, or it's South Park and you can kind of read between those lines.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm pretty sure that South Park makes a lot of people uncomfortable, even if they
Yeah.
themselves are aware that it's satire. But that doesn't mean that
Well,
that kind of commentary shouldn't exist.
right, and that's okay, like, I no, you don't have to be comfortable with everything, and that's another part of, like, I really wanna push for, you can probably afford to filter your selection process liberally given on how many you're going to get. Well, that's a good problem, that's the problem I wanna have. I wanna make it clear too that not every game is for everyone, and that's okay, and I really wanna drive that home to even the consumer side, like, I think it's worth paying for video games to be created, even if they're not for you. Like it's worth for driving forward. Video games are art, and art deserves to exist. And hopefully we're going to pull in people that agree with that, right? I don't expect everything to come out of FBC to be something that I'm into, and I'm the founder of it. And in fact, I hope that it's not because it's important to find areas that you're not comfortable with and let those exist and have those conversations. It's super important. So I absolutely don't mind the idea that we're going to create some uncomfortable games if they exist because good. That those should exist and not every game is for everyone and that's also okay.
So yeah, it could be a range of genres, topics,
Yep.
media. So it won't be that you know what you're funding necessarily, except for, let's say, these kind of guiding principles of,
Correct.
yeah, of the
You're
developers
going to
behind this.
fund you're going to fund knowing, well, hopefully you're going to fund knowing that you are creating a space for developers to develop what they want to make. That's basically the bottom line, and what we want to drive forward. And we'll hopefully get that through cool tiers of things and kind of the development of the artists and the developers as people. Right. That's the goal.
So let's look. Okay, there's one more question I had about how basically things could go wrong, even if you decide, okay, we're funding this project,
Yep.
but then I don't know. One idea was that you said that people are not allowed to fire staff. Um,
No layoffs. So
Layoffs. What's the difference?
layoffs. Um, It's a good question. Um, I'd have to like Google the actual like terminology for it to give you a good definition, but in my brain, at least, and I can have a better definition of this on the website because what you're pointing out is something important. In my brain, at least, a layoff is letting go of a specific amount of people at once. Don't let people go just to get a bigger piece of profits. I mean, that's valid. Oh, hey, I know you. Yeah, exactly. And there's a whole lot more to it. I think this is one of those things where it's hard to define out loud in this moment. Where I could probably again go to Google and find a definition for what a layoff is and be very prescriptive on what that is. But I think it's going to come down to evaluating kind of what's happening in the moment. Um, if you need to let someone go because of creative differences, because they're harassing you, because of lots of things, like we're absolutely not against that. In fact, we have a zero tolerance for harassment policy, where we very clearly state if you're doing these things, then you can't be part of it, and that goes for the people that you're hiring as well.
Hmm.
So if you have someone who is sexually exploitive or verbally abusive or something like that, then let them go. Like that's great. They shouldn't be part of the project. They shouldn't, you shouldn't be hiring them. And then many other reasons. There's plenty of other reasons to let someone go in the industry that isn't a layoff. And I think that's something that, again, to your point, we can better define as to what a layoff is. But ultimately, I think it's something that we'll know it when it exists, right?
Hmm.
That's a shitty answer to give you right now, but let me define it better and put it in the writing and say, well, this is what a layoff is explicitly. Don't do that.
Okay.
Right. But I think it's one of those things where we'll know it's a layoff.
But then what is the process for, let's say, when a studio decides that they want to fire somebody or part with some employee or co-founder because of creative differences or something like this?
Well,
Is that part of, let's say, the monthly meeting with the
sure.
board where you kind of present the situation? Maybe you have a bit of a mediation session with everybody involved and you discuss the fact that this is becoming kind of necessary for the team moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think that again, FPC is all about transparency. Unless there's something that really is like legally you can't be transparent about it in there. There's not a whole lot that I can think of that you couldn't at least talk to us about, and we couldn't make a statement on saying, one of the developers within X Studio has been let go due to creative differences, or one of the developers within X Studio has been let go because of harassment. And we are also very clear that this is something that we are going to not talk about. It's not something that we're going to push into the background because that already happens way too much in the industry. If
That's
you've
true.
got an employee that is harassing someone else, then we're going to post about it and we're going to make it clear that they were let go because of that, and because other people need to know about this kind of thing.
Mhm.
um,
But the
so
question would be
I
if you will be kind of part of, let's say, the mediation or investigation into the matter, you as FPC, because it's different when the studios kind of first have to go through you to kind of allow that firing to happen, especially if it's not for something criminal like, like
Yeah, yeah,
sexual
yeah.
abuse or something.
uh, Let me get that in just a minute, Dyer. I think that no, I don't think it's something that has to go through us to let someone go, because that really kind of defeats the purpose of letting studios create what they want to create, is micromanaging them, and that's not what we're here for. We're here to provide guidance if they start scope creeping. We're here to evaluate the timetable and make sure it still looks like you're making a project, but intrapersonally, what you're doing on your team ultimately, again, as long as it's not some weird criminal or harassment or something thing, then it's kind of on you to have those discussions with your team and to let go and depart with people as you will. I think that it's going to be important that we know about it after the fact. Hey, look, we had to let so and so go because of this. Okay. It's important that we are made aware of it, so then we can make a statement and say that the studio is now down one person because of these things. Excuse me, that's our dog. That's Bluebell. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? The bed is fine. Yeah.
Yeah, the dog
Um.
showed up a
Uh.
while ago, but now it's like doing some
Yeah.
redecoration.
She's kind of a nervous wreck. This dog. Anyways. I think it's. But then you know, if 10 people are let go, and there's a big difference between like a studio of 2 people, right? And a studio of 50 people, and letting half of them go in either case is a very different scenario. One is firing, one is a layoff, right? Um, uh, I think that's something that will need to be discussed after the fact. If you have to let go of 50% of your staff and you're 50 people, then we have to have that discussion. We have to understand why that needed to happen and how that's not a layoff. And if it is, then we're going to reevaluate your funding because you've already agreed to not laying people off within this project. And so much of this should come down to how we're funding, right? If we are funding your entire studio a living wage, then there's no reason for you to lay off 50% of your staff. It should work itself out. Like there's probably other reasons in there that people can find to lay off 50% of your staff, but generally that should work itself out with how we're funding you. Because we're not putting you in a situation where the whole point is to make it so you're not in a situation where you feel like you have to let go a bunch of people to make this thing work. That's part and parcel of why FPC is trying to exist.
I think Prism has a note there about what happens
Yep.
after the funding. So basically, layoffs could still happen once the project was funded, and maybe sales are bad, or people want to cut the
Yeah.
costs or the profit
So
share at the end of the project.
yeah, I mean, that's shitty. that's
Yeah.
that's shitty to do. But the reality is that we can only control what's happening during funding. I mean, the FPC is hopefully going to be a space where we can fund developers to reach a 1.0 status in their game, and then we will ultimately cut them loose and say, now you're free. And we will keep amplifying your game as something that's part of our library. We will keep marketing your game as something we helped fund. We hope that you will feel like part of an alumni, and you will talk very fondly of us and send more people to us, kind of thing. And um, and but but that's kind of the end of the relationship now. As of right now, that's the end of it. I have also been talking to a lot of cool people who are doing some cool things with platforms, with marketing, with kind of initially talking to developers on the front end of things. Maybe in a year there's an awesome pipeline here where we are working with these other groups of people, and they say, "Hey, we found these great group of developers. We'd love if you would go talk to FPC about funding, get involved with them, and then we can then push them over to a platform and say, well, this is an awesome platform for indie developers, and we've got an in with them, and then they've got some really cool perks with marketing and saying, hey, here's how to market your game once it's done, kind of thing." Maybe this happens. Maybe this doesn't happen, but ultimately, FPC is there to fund the game through a 1.0 status. What you do after that 1.0 status is kind of up to you. I think probably we would evaluate based on kind of that alumni status of what's happening afterwards. If you get funding and you have 15 people, you get funding through us, you make a game, and then you do something really shitty, then maybe we bring that up and we say, look, we're going to distance ourselves from this. We're proud of what we funded during this, but we can't support what's happening after the fact. If it comes down to the studio itself is just not making any money afterwards and the game isn't going anywhere, and you have to let people go, then that's just the unfortunate nature of the beast right now. I hope that we have a good pipeline where we can help people out further than just us, right?
Mm.
But that's not the goal immediately. The goal immediately is to be able to fund through us to the end of us, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think the way I can imagine it will be quite difficult to have the full transparency, especially after the collaboration with you is over, to
Right.
kind of know why people were fired slash
Right.
laid off after that 1.0 version. Um,
Right.
even if with
And
the
we
best
may not be able to
intentions.
do that.
Yeah.
Right. We may not be able to do that ultimately. At the most, I think we're going to be able to control what we can control while developers are within our program. And I think that's a really good start, right? It's better than not having an area for funding, and it's better than not having an area for people being transparent and to understand about how the development is going and stuff like that. We may just not be able to commit to a lot more after the fact, especially starting out. But I think that that's just got to be okay because we are still trying to provide a service within that window.
Yes. Another question. I'm kind of watching the clock and I see that we're
Yeah,
kind of 1.5 hours almost in. So you can let me know kind of like when you feel like you kind of want
I've
to.
got until about what 2 hours, so I can go for a full 2 hours, and then I've got to get ready for soccer game. The 8-year-old's got a soccer game that I'm coaching.
Okay, sounds good. Then, yeah, well, the next thing I wanted to ask you was also about these kind of like coming into this relationship. So basically, whoever it is that you decide to fund, you will have a contract with them. You kind of like outlining kind of these terms and
Yep.
what could be a breaker, what could be an out if they break these terms, right? That's kind of the
Right.
procedure. So to like to kind of ensure this transparency, will you also require studios to kind of share like accounting, like internal documents, stuff like this, so you can actually have an overview of, well, how is the money actually spent, not just because you say so, but because
Right.
you see that.
To some degree, yeah. I mean, I think that the key transparency pieces of this are where the funding is going. So if you're going to work with FBC, if we're going to fund you, then we are going to require that you're able to be open with your accounting with our funding. I think that it'll stop there though, right? If you're getting funding from somewhere else, if you're using Kickstarter, if you're using Patreon, then we're not exclusive, right? By all means, use every opportunity and method out there to make what you are able to make. But what our funding goes to needs to be accounted for because that's such an important part of what FVC stands for is this transparency. So yeah, I'm not sure how we're going to work that out at the moment, but there have to be methods of saying, well, here's what I've spent, the $2,000 that you gave me this month on, and where to see those things.
Yes, I'm curious how that will work in practice for your company because, at least coming from my side with like my experience with public funding, and some programs are not really like at least the ones I've had access to, they just kind of require that you send them the invoices that have been sent to you, or like the payment slips from your employees.
Yeah.
But there is no really like looking at your bank accounts or the contracts that you have in place with the people. So they kind of function on, well, they you kind of get trusted that you're being
Right.
honest. But I
Yeah.
think there could be some kind of bad actors to kind of pretend
Mhm.
where that money went. And I'm not sure these funding programs would find that out. At least not for a long time. I'm not even sure how they would find out.
Yeah, no, and I think that's valid, and I think that I don't know if there's a way around that, frankly. I mean, I think bad actors are gonna be bad actors no matter what, and they're going to find ways around this, and I could absolutely see where, a fake project, you know, hopefully doesn't get vetted, but a fake project could get vetted, and, you've got a bunch of Gen AI shit that comes in, and you can show off these little things you actually haven't done, and you can say that you've got these people working for you, and you can accept this funding, and, I don't think that's impossible, unfortunately. I think that we are just going to have to evaluate that as well as we can, in the same way that like Kickstarter definitely has folks who just throw up really cool looking things that aren't ever going to exist, right? Um, I hope that due to the nature of our month by month evaluation and check ins, we are better able to kind of recognize those things. And as we move forward and as we evaluate more things and more projects, hopefully that gets cleaner and better. Um, there's probably some vetting areas that we could invest in that we could look into that would make this a little easier. But I won't say that can't happen, right? I won't say that we'll have a perfect process that won't ever, not find a bad actor out. I just hope that A, we get people that aren't super interested in scamming everyone, and B, our monthly check-in process makes us a little bit better at kind of evaluating what's happening behind the scenes. So yeah, I think that's the best answer I've got right now.
Yeah, no, I think it's fair enough, and I think that if you have too many kind of guardrails in place, it can also just make everybody's
Yeah,
lives harder, and it's kind of against the point
exactly.
as well.
Yeah, yep. We're just gonna have to have some faith in some people and kind of just see how it goes.
Hmm. Um, you were also
Let's go.
talking earlier about kind of like what the basically what the, let's say, backers kind of get,
Yeah, the tiers.
the tiers, the, let's say, humanizing the devs, how this all works.
Mhm.
So I think there's basically games that the backers get, or like reductions in price, and also
Mhm.
these kind of like devlogs and maybe
Yeah.
interviews and like meetups with the developers. So how do you actually plan that? Like kind of what kind of setup do you plan there?
Let me find where I've written that down. Which, of course, oh, cool. You can pop out me. I've got a tier planning. So as of right now, every tier includes credits in the project. So you can say, oh, look, I was part of this. Similar to Kickstarter, Patreon, you get credits in the project. What I'd like to do is have a kind of so I'm calling them aid, support, sustain, and fund right now as my tier kind of levels. And again, that's kind of buying into that verbiage of you're helping something. You're not doing it for you. You're helping something. Admittedly, each one of these things come with tangible things, right? Because we still want to incentivize people to do this. But aid is $1 plus a month of or a dollar plus of pay whatever you can, and that's kind of our base tier. So it's access to the public project updates, monthly recap posts, backer thanks, shout outs on our website, read-only access to our community Discord, maybe a digital postcard, wallpaper, or something like that from studio each month,
So this
that
is
kind of thing.
valid also if they don't subscribe monthly, but they pay a lump sum once?
Yeah, you pay that once and you get access to that thing that month, right? So if you want to just jump in and pay for a month, then you're going to get a little bit of something from FPC and the studio that is being backed. So much of this, like I just wrote this down and we haven't evaluated it at a large scale, so uh, bear with me if some of this maybe doesn't make sense in a month from now when we reevaluate it, or it kind of changes. But this is the kind of initial idea on backing. The next tier, support, everything in the aid tier, monthly dev diaries or behind the scenes. So we're going to ask the developers to make some behind the scenes, write some dev diaries, stuff like that to put out monthly. Maybe a first look at early builds, trailers, or concept arts, kind of just really like kind of seeing it. That's our base, like you're kind of in it here, and seeing kind of what's going on. Voting rights on small collective decisions, like what our next AMA topic will be, maybe a feature in a devlog highlights. So being part of FPC as well. So you're not just talking, you're not just part of the studios, but you're also part of FPC. You're helping form what we exist as. Invite to our quarterly digital town halls. And then here's kind of the pieces that I'm not sure how they're going to exist eventually, but I'd really like them to exist. So 40% off of MSRP on a single copy of a produced game. So that's really our main like buy-in point. If you're funding at a monthly level, once that game comes out on some platform, you're going to get a large percentage off on that game. I would love to have you get that game free when it comes out, but I don't think that that's reasonable for the studios, the developers, or FPC at the moment. Maybe when we're a huge corporation in the future, and this is a giant thing, and it's awesome, we can do that. But a large percentage of the game off when it comes out, a copy of it, not any copy, all copies, but a copy of that game when it comes out. And then name and special thanks and credits for the game funded with that support. So again, your name in the credits of the game you're supporting. And then we'd really like, at least at that base tier, to have a one game per month free in a rotating FPC library. And this is where hopefully having those conversations with the developers that are building Glizzy, for instance, is the studio that I've been talking to. They are putting out a indie only platform for supporting. What did I miss? Oh, so much.
Oh, spam buddy,
Let's
come
just
so
recap
late.
everything really quickly. We'll recap everything. No. So this is where hopefully, having conversations with the folks at Glizzy, where they're putting in, yeah, that's it, where they're creating a platform for indie devs that are 100% profits go back to the indie developers. Having a space within there that is FPC games. Excellent. All the highlights right there. Glizzy, Bluebell, Biscuit, and Gizmo. But we won't talk about what those things are. They're just names. That's all you know.
Yeah,
Um,
you have no idea.
Right. We'll have a section, Bluebell is right there. We'll have a section in Glizzy where if you are a subscriber to FPC, a free game that has been funded by FPC will be rotating for free for you once a month. Um, that's kind of a stretch goal. And that kind of depends on this going pretty well and us being able to create a library of games, right? If we only put out 2 games, it's not much of a rotating library to say, you get one of these 2 games free every month. That won't really work out, but stretch goal for us. As well as, so then kind of the next tier up is sustain, access to quarterly progress reports and funding breakdowns. So like really getting the nitty gritty of how we're working things at FVC, exclusive interviews or roundtables with studio leads. I'd like to turn that into first result. I tried Googling glizzy, and the first result was I hate the term glizzy. We're referring to hot dogs.
Yeah, I don't know why people call hot dogs glizzy, but they do for
Well,
some reason.
it is a thing, and I brought this up to Lachlan, one of the creators of
They're
the
from
Glizzy
Australia,
platform.
right?
Yeah, they're from Australia. He was like, "Yeah, we know." So I was like, this is like a slang term for hot dog. He's like, "Yeah, we know, we love it, and that's why our icon is this crazy two-headed hot dog." And I was like, "Okay, you guys go for it. I love it."
Okay,
So
they
they are
go full
completely
embracing
into
it.
the iconography. It's great. Um, but yeah, um, interviews and roundtables with studio leads. I'd really like to turn that into a FPC podcast. And so if you're at that tier, the $30 tier, then you're getting access to that podcast where we're talking to the developers and the lead and the studios. Priority access to collective wide play tests and events. Monthly digital sustain pack, wallpapers, soundtracks, printable art, stuff from the studios that they're putting out. They're already kind of working through. And then our top tier, everything that I've already talked about, personal thank you message or video from a featured studio each year. behind closed doors access to big picture collective planning sessions. So again, more access to what FPC is becoming, but kind of more intricate, granular access to that. Name listed on our annual impact report, a stretch goal, if feasible, an annual physical Zine. I only read that word. I never say it out loud. Or
Isn't it
zine,
zine?
magazine,
I think it's
zine.
zine,
God,
but I'm
I
also
hate
not
saying that word
intentional.
out loud.
It's worse than glizzy.
Annual physical zine or art book, if funded and feasible. So those are the overall tiers right now. A lot of those are FPC tiers, and then they are kind of stock standard for every studio that's coming in. So hopefully you don't have to come up with your own cool things that you're going to put out, but you can just say, okay, well, um, would a glizzy be called a glizzy? I hate that.
Oh my God,
I hate it.
Keely.
It's gross. I don't like that one. A glizine.
Yeah, but
Um,
maybe you can
uh,
tell the glizzy people, and maybe they'll love it.
hey, you guys need to make a glizine.
Yeah,
They would love that.
I
But yeah,
would.
that's what we've got right now. This is very fluid. Probably I wouldn't say the least worked on, but the least that we've worked on as a team. This is the thing that I threw together at the very beginning of this 2 months ago when I was like, hey, this is a cool idea. And then it's just kind of sat there on there. Will devs have to provide a roadmap for the up to 2 years of funding they would get from the collective before allocated funding? It's a good question. I think a 10,000-foot view roadmap, yes. It's still important that we have that discussion of here's kind of what you are creating and planning to create over the next 2 years, because we've got to be able to say, yeah, this sounds like it's feasible versus, whoa, this sounds like a 10-year project, not a 2-year project. I understand though, and I think to your point between the lines here is that 2 years of a roadmap is going to be very difficult to do because there's so much involved in that. But that being said, I think that a feasibility 10,000-foot view, 100,000-foot view timeline is something that we would require. And that can evolve the kind of nitty gritty granular part of it. Kind of I've said nitty gritty like 40 times during this podcast. I just want to say during this live stream.
If you
Um,
don't bring attention to it, nobody will notice.
it's too bad. I already did. I hope you
Yeah,
all listen to me and go, "Oh, Dylan, why are you saying nitty gritty so much every time I say this now?" I think that'll evolve. I think the roadmap will evolve as we go month by month or month by month, and that 10,000 foot view will shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink. But yeah, I think we're going to have to at least ask for some sort of timeline there to say whether or not this is feasible.
but how do you calculate how much money, like, how do you calculate the monthly sum that you actually pay to a team? And does that change throughout the project? And how, like, when do you adjust that sum if it turns out that maybe they need more or less than they estimated?
Yeah. So we're not funding. Remember, we're not funding a singular project. We're funding developers and studios. So we are funding people a living wage to create, not how much it's going to cost for this project to exist. So that's one of the key differences between us and Kickstarter is that we're going to evaluate where you live, what your situation is, and what a living wage is for you, and where you are, and for your team. And so once that's evaluated,
Oh
excellent.
God, you've earned yourself a command on this channel. Congrats.
The nitty gritty, I like it. Um, so it's oh god, the nitty gritty. It's just going to come. It's going to come down to that calculation, right? Of where you live, what the cost of living is where you live, and what a living wage looks like for where you are in the world. At the end of the day. And that's what we're going to pay you and your team. And we'll add those up. And we'll add those up, for funding your team every month. And I don't think, I mean, I certainly that will change, right? As cost of living adjusts, changes. Ultimately, that only goes up in our world right now. And we absolutely intend to honor that as it goes up and say, well, now we're going to be paying this much a month for them. Hopefully, we bake that into the support tiers and the margin and all of that. In terms of if you need more funding, I think that really comes down to, because again, we're not paying for the project, we're paying for the developers. That comes down to the timeline. It comes down to if you need to extend your timeline out. And we will absolutely have some grace periods built into that, up to X amount of months. I do think that reasonably we have to have a cutoff, though. To say, if you're going to be part of a project, you have to agree. Ultimately, you have to agree to put this thing out when you put it out, like to be done when you say you're going to be done. But we also realize that things happen in life, and that you know not everything meets a deadline. And so here's our grace period on that deadline and how we're going to manage it, the discussions we're going to have to get you back on track with these things, to hopefully re-aim you. But if we're 6 months out and we're still paying you, then we have to move on. We've paid you for, 50% more than we thought we were going to have to. And we're grateful to have the opportunity to pay you for this. And we hope that you can keep making this thing, but we have to stop down, pivot to a different project. And that just is going to be part of the terms of how we're going to do things.
Mm. And about freelancers, let's say that just come in for, especially if it's stuff like voice acting or I don't know,
Yep.
like localization or services that are maybe just kind of like a 1 month thing. Does that get communicated to FPC for, yeah, this month we need a bit more because we need to bring in this voice actor and we only need them for this month. Does that get adjusted month by month if freelancers come
Yeah,
in?
I think that that's a reasonable ask, and something that reasonably we can fund as well. The ability to hire other people in for parts of this. I mean, ultimately, if you look at it from a high level perspective, that's just part of staff for the time being, and we're paying them as well. Like we're paying your staff for what they're creating, based off of mostly living wage. But I think there is some flex there for if you're pulling someone in for this kind of one-off thing and you're paying them this amount of money. Yeah, I think that's something we can fund.
Yes, but then that case it might not be a sum that you can put out. That is, let's say, like the average monthly pay
Right.
in
No,
that
that would
region.
be, yeah. Right. I think in that case we would flex outside of the living wage part of it, and we would say that we are also funding, $5,000 for this piece of this project to come together, based on this person that they're bringing in, and then we celebrate that person coming in, and we say, hey, they're pulling in this voice actor for this piece of it. Part of the funding is going to go to that as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't think those things are mutually exclusive. I think that we can say that for the most part, we are paying a living wage for this. We're also paying for parts of the project that need to exist as they come in that you're not creating, because the part of your development staff isn't creating, but we're reaching outside of development staff for on a case by case basis.
Will you also fund marketing then, or like like all of this promotional stuff that technically is
No.
not direct development?
No. What we will do is spotlight into our own marketing within Fair Play Collective and push out that we're doing this thing. We will highlight studios. We will bring attention where we can, all of our socials and stuff like that. But I have talked to a separate studio that is offering cheap marketing or cheaper marketing to any developers that hopefully we will have as part of one of the perks of being a developer within Fairplay Collective is access to a bunch of their writings, access to them exclusively for a cheaper rate on marketing, on working on trailers and stuff like that. So the other parts of Fair Play Collective that aren't part of the tiers are on the developer side of things. Are these associations with these other kind of like-minded organizations that I've had conversations with that are very eager to be like, hey, we'd love to be kind of part of this on a like kind of a parallel track where you say, hey, if you're a developer with Fair Play Collective, you have access to these resources that we provide, a lot easier, as well as some mentorship and some good articles on, how to manage funding as a independent studio, how to avoid predatory VCs, things to look out for, stuff like that. There's a lot of other perks that I'd really like to be part of the developer experience with Fairplay Collective that aren't just give us dev diaries that they can see, but more of a like, here's how to help you through this process as well.
Yeah, I think it's really good that you are actually like a proper collective that also apart from just the money, but anyway, that's a huge thing to bring into a collective, but also the fact that you bring partnerships with
Yeah,
marketing
and I
or like mentorship opportunities. That is also why I think collectives are a really important way for indies to organize into.
yep, and I've been super fortunate to have these people reach out. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, so many people have reached out and just said, "Hey, I'd love to offer my expertise in this for the Fair Play Collective," or "I'd love to like offer you a space in this platform I'm creating," or this space that I'm creating for indie developers to be part of things. And so unless we really like shit the bed on where we're going with this, I think that we're just going to have a lot of support in kind of adjacent places of the industry where they're kind of creating space for us already and saying FPC will be part of this in this kind of capacity, which is super cool. So I really foresee this being a collective of of like-minded people who are trying to make indie development better.
Yeah, I'm really excited. But let me let me throw in maybe like one more question because I see the time is almost up.
That's
Um,
fine.
but I had also kind of I think this question goes back a little bit to kind of who is allowed into the collective, and like I guess one thing that I wanted to cover is what kind of studio. How do I phrase this question? Give me a second. Basically, there are
Okay.
studios that operate, let's say, in the indie space, but they are technically actually owned by a corporation or like a
Oh,
bigger
yeah, no.
parent company. And what is, I guess, what is the stance on that? If technically that parent company could still kind of like fund the entire development, is it justified
I
that they would still enter this kind of crowdfunding
No, I don't
space?
think it is. You know, who doesn't need a Kickstarter? What's his face that oh my god, I just forgot his name. Hang on. He's the damn writer that writes every fantasy novel right now. Wrote the damn Mistborn trilogy.
Um,
What's his damn
Maybe
name?
Chad knows. Brandon
Sanderson,
Sanderson.
thank you. You know who doesn't need a Kickstarter? Brandon Dan Sanderson doesn't need a Kickstarter. You know who has a Kickstarter and makes a ton of money? Brandon Dan Sanderson. There are so many of these, like Sanderson Branderson, exactly, nitty gritty. There are so many of these studios and creatives that should just have buku money that still are doing this uh
Chad, please.
that's amazing, that are still doing this like crowdfunding thing, and it drives me crazy. And I think in this exact same capacity, we are not like that will completely go against our mission here is if we're supporting studios that are already being supported or could be supported. And I'm sorry and I feel for these studios that aren't getting funding from their parent EA companies. Like, that sucks. That sucks that that happens. But I'm also not interested in funding studios that are owned by EA, right? I mean, that's not what this is. So yeah, we're talking about truly independent studios, truly independent developers, and not just studios, like sole developers too. If you're a sole developer, you've been working on something, you want to work on something, great, throw it in, throw your head in. But I'm not at all interested in funding indie studios that are owned by, you know, Microsoft and whatnot. Um, a good example, I think, is it even goes kind of as far as, and I don't want to bad talk Romero Games. Romero Games just got cut from Microsoft, but at the same time, Romero Games is a huge name. John Romero is a huge name
That's
out
true.
there. I expect that John Romero will get funding, and in fact, came out pretty quickly and was like, "Hey, thanks everyone. We've got a lot of publishers that have reached out to us." You know, I don't expect a studio like that, even that was owned by a company that now isn't, but is still a huge name, to be part of the Fair Play Collective. That's not what we exist for.
Hmm.
So I think that'll be pretty easy to validate and be like, oh, seems like you could go ask your parent company for more money that would be better served than us.
Okay, but how do you handle cases where maybe there is kind of like a parent company situation, but like maybe they're also not huge? Like that's still kind of technically not
Hmm.
indie.
Yeah,
But
I
I
don't
know
know.
I have
That's a
some people I know, for example, have funded kind of like I don't know what to call it. Let's say kind of like an investor container, which is they're trying to attract investors into this
Sure.
father company, whatever you want to call it, and it has this a daughter company that is actually developing games. Um, but neither of these is like very established right now. They're just kind of both of these are small enterprises, um, with kind of maybe the same or shareholders or stuff like that, or like at least like not major differences in how they are operating.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know
Case
how
by
you would
case, I
approach
think
that.
I think that realistically, we're going to have enough people that aren't associated with anyone else that that's not going to be a huge worry. That we could say, look, we're really looking for indie developers that aren't associated with other companies right now. Um, if this goes crazy and we're supporting and funding, you know, 1,000 developers at a time, then you know we can have that discussion and say, well, we're really look, we're running out of people that we could support. We want to broaden this more and allow more in. That'd be great. I would love that, and that's a problem that I'm very excited to have eventually. But I think that that's a problem for then. I think that we are just going to have so many people who aren't affiliated with anyone that are just struggling to make a game in their own space without any kind of help that it will be very easy to say, this is what's right for Fair Play Collective right now. Um, you know,
Hmm.
and we'll evaluate those that, you know, are part of shareholders and you know, parent companies later at some other date.
Yeah, no, I think
And
that's
that's
fair
not to
enough.
say that that's not to say we want to evaluate that, you know, when it happens. You know, we want to evaluate each company on its own merits and where they are, and you know, if they have a parent company that's literally making no money, and really it's just two people trying to make a game that happen to be employed by this other company that happens to be associated with the video game industry, like you know, we'll evaluate those on a case by case basis.
Hmm.
But I don't think we're gonna have problems finding people that need help that aren't affiliated with anyone.
Okay. I think I have to put a cap on all the questions. There would be more, but we could be here all day.
We could.
So I think
I'm
I will
I'm
end
also
the
up for more
questions.
questions.
Yeah, maybe if
Yeah.
Chad has something that we haven't covered and you still have, let's say, 5 minutes.
Yeah,
But
I do, but I
I
was also gonna say if you wanna email me questions, if you wanna, like, hit me up on LinkedIn with questions, like, you've already sent me 2 pages of questions, that we've talked through,
To be honest, there
and,
were
like
some that weren't answered in the end.
yeah,
Yeah,
well,
because like back when I learned about this initiative, I sent you like a full email, like with at least 10 questions. Then you put those
yeah,
in a document, so
a
you and
shared
your
doc with me and
partner,
Andy.
yeah,
Yeah.
Andy could actually like answer each question, and then I came back and I wrote more questions into that document on a third round, and then I think you guys didn't have time anymore, which
Oh, I
is
forgot that you had more questions in there. I thought they were just follow-ups. I'll follow up on that,
oh,
but
I think no,
I
I
will
think mostly I was being like, "Oh yeah, thumbs up, I love this," but there were a few questions still, but I don't
I'll
even know
still
what
follow
they
up on
were
those.
anymore. By now, I
That's
might.
fine. I've got that document. I can find it and email you back later. I
Oh
do want to say
dear.
though, like if if uh if folks have questions that weren't answered, well, if you have questions, you can email me. It's hello@fairplaycollective.org. You can go to LinkedIn. You can find us there. You can find me on Blue Sky. That's it. Thank you. Just hello. It's just Fair Play Collective. Like that's. I think we're the only ones that exist. Thank God. And just find wherever and ask the questions. I'm more than happy to answer them. I'm happy to talk to people. I'm happy for people to be involved. We're not at a stage where I'm like, all right, no more people. I don't need any more help. We definitely need more help. Yeah, be part of it if you want to. Just hang out and watch from the sidelines if you want to. But yeah, it's very exciting.
But also tell other devs, other people in your
Yeah,
circles
yeah.
about this.
Please share this out as much as you're comfortable. Can I drop my newsletter in here?
Yeah, yeah, go for it.
'Cause that's the other thing that I'm excited about.
Yeah, that just
But I made a
got.
newsletter like 3 days ago.
Yeah, I signed up, but I think I
Yeah, you
was a
did.
bit confused about the interface because signing up is like all the way to the bottom, while it looks like you're already reading the newsletter, but if you want
It,
to sign up for it,
it
you still
is.
have to scroll down.
So I've got a like a website here. Hold on. It's a weird website. Setting up a newsletter is a pain in the ass. I want to say that setting up a newsletter is an absolute pain in the ass. And it's the same as a website. It's just all these companies that just want a shit ton of your money. ultimately to make a thing for you. And so I just like I found a website that has a free tier for up to like 5,000 subscribers, which if I hit that, thank God. Um, and and so the way it works is you create the newsletter that then you can send out as a link, which to your point just looks like you're already part of the newsletter, but you're not subscribed to it. You're just reading it on the web. And at the very bottom is a button to subscribe to it. There's also like a landing page link that I could drop places that I just haven't done anything with. Let me see. Where's my share? All right, so that's the link to the newsletter, and that does require you to scroll down and hit subscribe on it, which then takes you to the actual website interface, which is if you don't want to read the newsletter but you just want to subscribe, there's that, and that's what I really should have dropped in like LinkedIn and everything like that, but I didn't know that existed, frankly, because this whole process is so confusing and it's a pain in the ass.
Oh, I
Anyways,
see. But yeah, setting up infrastructure is a pain in the ass, and there's too many services that just want to
there are
take a
so
huge
many.
premium because they
Yeah.
kind of get rid of that hassle for you in a way, but you still end up with more hassle later because of their like the way they're implemented. You might, I don't know, like
Well, and all
I've
the
used.
free tiers are bullshit. All the free tiers are it's so frustrating because I've been trying to find like good collaborative software to talk to my team, and everybody's got this awesome free tier, and it seems like this is exactly what you need, but it turns out that the free tier is actually just a 7-day trial of the premium tier. And so you sign up for it, and then 2 days later they're like, "You've got 6 days left on your premium tier trial." I'm like, "Wait, no, I thought all this shit was free. I just, come on, man." So running into that a lot, but whatever, it's fine. We're making it work. It's functional. We're having discussions. It's great.
Yeah,
I
I
don't need to
mean, if
complain.
you're having so much hassle now organizing just like the group you have, I wonder how it's going to be later when you actually have to have like these backers that have accounts, I guess, and how do you get to share
I've
all
got
this?
someone on that has already offered to help with like the Stripe implementation on the website and the member section and stuff like that. So I'm very lucky to have a couple of people who are like, hey, when you get to this space, I want to help you build this because I've already built this for a couple of other companies.
So you
But
will actually like these folks will help you build the kind of
yep,
the what do you call it? The website,
the
the database, like all this
yeah the data it's because they're gonna have database yeah hassle culture yeah
the
hassle hustle
account
culture
account managing
yeah
management side
yeah.
of things.
Absolutely, and hopefully this will all be paid. You know, right now, admittedly, the found team isn't paid; they're all volunteering their time. But you know, I very much intend for this to be a paid venture for everyone involved. Like as part of the we're paying you a fair wage for creating games. I also, you know, I intend to pay the people that are helping me a fair wage to help create this and to be part of this. But
Mhm.
you know, we'll see when we get there. Right now, I'm very happy to have some awesome people that are willing to help me for free.
All right, great, Dylan. I'm
Well,
really excited. Thank you so much. Yeah,
yeah,
it
thanks
was
for
really
chatting with me.
great to talk to you today.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Really hyped that this worked out and I actually got you on call. That's
Yeah, it was
awesome.
cool. All right, everyone, enjoy your nitty gritties, and I will hopefully talk to you all later.